I'm trying to create a surface here that will read as very smooth from a distance, but when observed up close, has some texture to it. Why do I choose this surface for the majority of my work? Well, it's because it's the natural way skin appears to us. Skin is not smooth at all. There's hair, pores, and all sorts of stuff going on. From a distance, however, none of these things are so apparent. We can't really see them, and therein lies the solution, in my opinion. A surface that is utterly smooth on a sculpture is extremely time-consuming and difficult to achieve, and even more importantly, perhaps not worth the time spent to achieve it. This is all opinion, of course, and yours might differ from mine, which is fine. Surface is a very subjective topic, and the decisions made here in regards to the finished surface are not decisions that will ultimately decide whether or not the work is competent. Those decisions, making work competent or not, those decisions are made long before we ever get to this stage, and ideally, we are not going to be polishing a turd here, if we've done our job well. By attempting to mimic the effect skin has without actually spending the time-consuming effort of sculpting the real representation of skin, which would of course include attempting to sculpt pores, for example, we can land at a result which reflects light in a similar fashion to skin, but is ultimately, when observed from up close, clearly handmade. I do really like the effect this has, and the chances for interesting bronze patinas when doing so is also really cool. As stated, surface is such a personal thing, but here is my version, or the one that I tend to go for in most instances anyway. So what we are doing is attempting to visually represent skin. We are not representing the real thing, but an illusion of the real thing. Any illusion can be spotted as being fake, but it's not my intention to trick anybody into believing that I'm actually sculpting skin here. I'm more looking for the feel of skin so that my sculpture reads as being real. Tricking anyone is not really what we're trying to do. There are a few tricks to the trade that I think can lead you down a more successful path when attempting to do this, so let me explain those. Tool marks always traveling in the same direction is a dead giveaway and also appears much more like damage from rain than they do as intentional marks. Modeling works best when working across the form, perpendicular to the direction of the forms, but you do want to vary this direction slightly as well, angle it a little bit more in both directions to create what feels like a slightly random surface texture. This randomness will read much better and look and feel more natural, and less like your sculpture got rained on for 1,000 years. Not only do I use my wood modeling tool in this way, but I would also use my rakes and loops in this fashion. There shouldn't be too much rhyme or reason to the patterns you leave behind, if you are after a surface that looks and feels like real skin, that is. As you can probably see, I'm not looking to finish both sides at the same time. For the most part, we're working on finishing the right side of the face, that is the right side to us. This has a fairly simple explanation to it, and I do it this way because I'm right-handed. The right side of the face is therefore a little bit easier for me to get to, without needing to work in awkward positions. So what happened to my much harped upon working symmetrically and maintaining a level of harmony throughout the entire process idea? Symmetry for me, or the usefulness of maintaining it, kind of goes out the window once we get into the finishing pass. This requires a very delicate hand and patience, and so jumping around all over the place isn't really conducive to achieving the level of finish that I'm after achieving. We have to spend a lot of time in one section. Symmetry and harmony matters much more to me during the block-in part of the process, as there we can end up in a situation where I have to take a serious amount of time to correct something. Larger amounts of clay, for example, are added during this period of the process as well, leading to a much greater chance of something being wrong, or rather, something being very wrong, because a lot of clay is added. Any asymmetry I accidentally introduce at this point is likely going to be very small, and this is why I've elected to remove so much of my centerline, for example. I'm not so worried about it. Knowing that we are supposed to respect work done in previous sessions to an almost religious degree right now certainly helps me out as well. I'm very careful not to accidentally change anything on a fundamental level. None of my shape design is going to go anywhere during this session. I'm not moving anything. None of my proportions are being altered. When I'm working around the eye, I'm going to be super careful to make sure I'm not tweaking the lids up or down, accidentally altering the position or the proportion of that feature. Because of what I believe to be a very solid setup, I can work throughout this part of the process in an asymmetrical fashion without too much risk. As long as I'm awake at the wheel and understand that I should not make moves that fundamentally change what my sculpture is.